Howdy folks, Justin here, and today I wanted to talk about 6 cards that I think can break a control mirror match, right? So like a lot of the times when you're playing control on control mirrors, you have dead cards, not necessarily dead, but like Fighters Guild Recruit, for instance, great in some matchups, not very fantastic in some others. Um, so what I wanted to do today was look at 6 cards from the original set that I think are worth taking a look at now, because in some parts of the ladder, not in all parts of the ladder, but in some parts of the ladder, we're seeing sort of a glut of control decks. And so these are cards you can include in various decks that I think can give you the edge in those control on control matchups. First one is one of my favorite cards. This is Orb of Era Mina. Aside from the fact that activating this and stealing enough expensive cards from your opponent's deck gives you an achievement, this is one of the few ways in Legends to draw multiple cards off the same card. Obviously, since the debut of Eclipse Baroness, this card is not as unique in that function anymore, since Eclipse Baroness is all over the place. But Orb of Era Mina is still a really powerful card, and when you consider the fact that the cards that you're taking from your opponent's deck are in a deck that is designed to go long and has a lot of expensive, powerful resources in it, taking 3 of those can really turn the game around in your favor. I used to run Orb of Era Mina in my pre-Dark Brotherhood version of my Crusader list, and it would single-handedly win the control match sometimes. Since then the Crusader list has morphed itself into a little faster, a little sleeker mid-range deck. But Orb of Era Mina is still the sort of card you can throw in a mid-range deck, but you can get a ton of value out of in a control mirror. It can break a control mirror pretty easily. So this is one that I would definitely take a look at if I was running into a lot of control mirrors. And the reason I wanted to pick this one first is because like the last card I'll be looking at today, it is a card you can put in any color combination of decks. So if you find yourself, coming up low on resources in a control mirror with any deck you're playing, Orb of Era Mina could be there to help work things out for you. Next card I want to look at is kind of honestly, the card that I have probably been the most wrong about ever in the history of this game. I was fairly convinced during closed beta. I remember getting into a couple, not like arguments about this, but I remember a couple times having discussions about this card because there was a couple people who said that Nest of Vipers was great. I was very adamant Nest of Vipers is unplayable. It turns out there are circumstances, and this came up the other day on Reddit, which is what reminded me of this whole idea for this video. There are certain situations where Nest of Vipers is actually pretty amazing. Even if it only spawns 2 Vipers, well, even if you only kill 2 opposing creatures with this, that's still a 2-for-1, and that's the sort of trade that wins you the game, right? In the control mirror, they become really attrition-y type battles. Nest of Vipers is obviously capable of 4-for-1ing an opponent. It leaves creatures on the board, for future turns if they're not immediately used as removal. And, in a pinch, it's reach, right? It is potentially 4 damage to the opponent's dome with 1 card. That's probably not the most effective use of this card or your Magicka in general, but it is possible. It's a reasonably flexible card. For the cost of a Manticora, you can kill a Manticora and a Marak and whatever the Marak stole and have a Viper left over. That is, of course, like an incredibly best case scenario, but it's not impossible either. And in green, whose removal is typically limited to territorial Vipers and finish off effects, Nest of Vipers can get some work done, and that it wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. So I think it's a card to consider when you're looking for ways to break the control mirror and you're running green. Next is an old favorite of mine, good old Bone Colossus. Bone Colossus was in a lot of early versions of Scout, simply because, it puts a ton of attack and defense on the board, and it's also kind of hard card to deal with. For a lot of the same reasons that Supreme Atromancer is harder to deal with, except it costs less, and on turn 6 or turn 7 or turn 8, if you're ramping, whatever, you swing for potentially a ton of damage. It's better in multiples, kind of like Supreme Atromancer, but unlike Supreme Atromancer, it it doesn't see play that often. But I think Bone Colossus is just a really effective way to deal with a lot of decks that are focusing on single target removal. And with I think Mage Control being one of the less popular control decks in the meta right now, in these areas that are seeing a lot of control decks, um, the rest of the colors have a little bit harder time dealing with Bone Colossus. You know, even if you just left with a 5/5 that your opponent spent some resources to remove the tokens, or whatever the case may be, it's really difficult not to get at least a 2-for-1 with a Bone Colossus on the board. Obviously, 2 Bone Colossus on the board is crazy because they all get +1/+1 from each other, and each Colossus does, and all the tokens themselves get +2/+2. So Bone Colossus is a great way to break the control mirror. As is, kind of the theme here, of course, you may be noticing at this point, is that anything that produces multiple cards from your opponent's worth of value is just good. And in a mirror, if there's a meta where you're not worried about the fact that your deck kind of sucks against aggro because there isn't aggro, or the most aggressive deck is a mid-range sorcerer or mid-range crusader list, play Bone Colossus, right? Like, how does Crusader deal with this? I mean, they have 3 main deck removal spells that can kill the Bone Colossus itself. That leaves 3/1/1 tokens. That's still value, right? Even if they Piercing Javelin, they would need Piercing Javelin, Skaven Pyromancer to kind of clean things up. That's 8 Magicka and 2 cards. Like, that seems pretty good. Leaves them with a 2/3 behind. Bone Colossus is just beefy, and it's good against everything that's not aggro. And if you don't have to worry about aggro because it's a control meta, Bone Colossus. Next is another card, and if there's ever a card that I think deserves more play in general, not just as a means to beat control, I think it's Heirloom Greatsword. I think Heirloom Greatsword is a severely underrated card. I think you can stick this in just about any deck and get a lot of value. Obviously, partially because it returns to your hand all the time. But I was actually really shocked that this card didn't see more play when Item Sorcerer was everywhere. I think Heirloom Greatsword fits into any deck that runs blue. I don't mean to be like, I don't mean, this isn't hyperbole. Like, Heirloom Greatsword is a great card. Even as just a one of, and you probably really only want one of these, it's an endless source of damage that turns every card in your deck into a threat. And in the deck where, like, it would be sort of irresponsible to not run anti-aggro or anti-mid-range cards, even if you're just expecting to play against control all day, because it's possible that you don't, you're going to be running smaller creatures that are sort of irrelevant in a control match. Well, suddenly with Heirloom Greatsword, those cards are all relevant threats, right? This will eventually push through damage. It will let you trade up with every creature you have. Heirloom Greatsword is just a beating of a card. I think Heirloom Greatsword is amazing. In only the tightest lists would I not that run blue would I not run Heirloom Greatsword. I think it's amazing. I mean, obviously it's great in Arena too, but I think in Constructed it has a huge place in ratcheting up the threat level of all the cards that you're just running in a control deck that you're not really interested in playing in the control mirror. Heirloom Greatsword's there. There's an Heirloom Greatsword for that. That's the best way to put that. Next we have kind of a funny card, but one that I think is worth considering. Blackmail. This is probably the worst card that I'm going to recommend you try playing, but it's actually a lot better than you might think it is. If you're playing a deck, okay, if you're trying to break the control mirror, we discussed with Orb of Era Mina, your opponent's cards, likely great, right? Likely high impact, powerful cards. Blackmail offers that as a one-time effect. But what this card does is, like Orb of Era Mina, what this card does is give the better player an advantage. Because, first of all, you have cards that are, potentially not in your normal colors, which creates the opportunity for strange interactions with the cards that are originally in your deck. So thinking on the fly, being, bright, savvy player is going to pay off in dividends with Blackmail. And furthermore, it is a bit of a mind game with your opponent too, because right, they have no idea what you stole. They don't know what color it is. It's just for all the same reasons Orb of Era Mina is a really good card in the control mirror. Blackmail is a reasonable card in the control mirror, and one that I think is a lot of fun to play too. I know that like I'm trying to offer a like actual rational argument for most of these cards, and there exists a rational argument for Blackmail, and it's the same one that exists for Orb of Era Mina, minus the stuff about card advantage. But Blackmail is just a fun card to play, and a card that really offers almost no opportunity cost. It's one Magicka, like in a control mirror specifically. Like, what are you going to be doing with one Magicka? I think Blackmail is worth taking a look at. Finally, there's a card that I am very happy to be able to recommend. Good old Altar of Despair, right? I said recently on Twitter, I think, in a world where Manticora decks are king, right? Isn't the Manticora deck that runs Altar of Despair even better, right? Well, I think the answer to that is obviously yes. Altar of Despair is an incredibly powerful engine that can provide, in some cases, depending on the build of your deck, a limitless supply of resources to combat your opponent. Altar of Despair, all other things being equal, the control deck with Altar of Despair in it, I think, will win. Draw dependent, of course, but the ability for you to use this card as a way to turn every threat in your deck into something better is just an incredible power. This video, I think, comes out after my video with Altar of Despair Monk, a deck I've really had a lot of fun playing over time, and you can see in that video how basically, like, I'm playing a Manticora deck, my opponent's playing a Manticora deck, but I have Altar of Despair. Actually, I had 3 of them in that game, and I buried my opponent under card advantage. And Altar of Despair is responsible for that. It allows you to cycle through and remove from your deck functionally all the small crappy cards that aren't necessarily crappy, but aren't really going to make a lot of an impact on the control game. It's another card that rewards a savvy player, maybe a player who's running Microsoft Paint in the background with a copy of his deck list that he's making little check marks on when he pulls out a creature. I don't know. I don't know anybody like that. But if I did, that would be a guy who would get rewarded for playing Altar of Despair. And if the meta was truly nothing but giant, beastie, greedy decks, the identical 50 cards plus 3 Altars of Despair, even at 53 cards, would be a better deck. I guarantee it. So that's it. That's a look at six cards that I think can break the control mirror. 6 cards that are exceptionally good in a control meta. I don't necessarily think we're at some kind of like just over the top insane control meta right now. Maybe we're closer than we've ever been before. Maybe not. I think certainly Ramp Scout control mage meta, like the weeks right before and right after Histgrove were released, were probably more control-y. I mean, I could be mistaken. I know that what happens in like the top 20 of Legend ranks is not really reflective of what happens in the rest of Legend or in ranks 1 through 5. But we're definitely drifting towards an area where it's like there are more control decks than there certainly have been for a while. And of course things come and go, but that's why this video is so timely, because this is where we are right now. That's the list. Orb of Era Mina, Nest of Vipers, Bone Colossus, Altar of Despair, Heirloom Greatsword, and Blackmail. Blackmail being the kind of like meme suggestion. So anyway, I hope this video was interesting. Hope it made you take a look at some cards that maybe you hadn't considered in a while. And if you have any questions, let me know. I will see you on the ladder. Bye-bye.